What is going on, everybody? It is a new season. We have our first inaugural episode, Volume 1. It's going to be Mike and Rico College Football Breakdown 2023. Um, Crazy weekend, a real good weekend, depending on who you root for. The Noles had a pretty damn good weekend. And Mike, I know you're still getting back on track from the trip to Orlando. Congratulations. I know that was a
Mhm.
successful trip, one you're looking forward to.
Yep.
And the Noles weren't the only team that stood out. There were several other ones, and we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it, break it down. College football's best time of the year. Pro football starting this weekend. I know we got some fantasy football action coming up on Thursday, big game. My Detroit Lions, we'll see what they do. We're supposed to be good. We'll see. They're going to be in Arrowhead on Thursday night. But college football is going to be the focus right now, and we're going to get into it. I'll start with you, Mike. What are the biggest takeaways that you had from week one before we go into the individual games?
You had some surprises. That's one takeaway, and then, but the main thing was a lot of sloppiness, a lot of sloppy
Yeah.
play, a lot of
Yeah.
just. There was a lot of uncertainty when you saw a lot of these teams. Like a lot of these teams aren't going to look the same in what they look like now compared to what they're going to look like in week three. So I think there was a lot of sloppiness, but there was also obviously a number one takeaway is the teams that you kind of feel like, you know what? They got dudes, they got players, they got coaches, they got staffs, they got the team that is going to give a lot of people problems. Obviously, FSU had the biggest one because there was a top 10 matchup, and they certainly be a top five team. So that one was big. And then I really like that Michigan team. I rewatched a lot of what they do. I'm not that really concerned with the sloppiness in the second half because, like I said, that's what you saw a lot of with a lot of these teams. But and I'm my other takeaway is like or in the SEC, it's like who's going to be the team because I don't know if there's a can't for surefire team. When I saw it, like Jalen Milfro looked really good, but I mean you're playing Middle Tennessee State, and it's like, are you going to be able to do that against SEC defenses? Can you make those throws? And then Tennessee, we got to see consistency across the board when they play. And then when I think the team that I was really impressed with was watch Texas A&M. I really like what Jimbo does, and I really like
Mm-hmm.
the lineup they have, the quarterback they have, the defense they have. I think that's a team that's going to be reckoned with. So I think it's really, I don't think there's a clear cut, like for surefire team in the SEC. I think LSU's good, and I certainly think Georgia's good, but I don't know about that quarterback yet with Georgia. Like I'm uncertain about a lot of these quarterbacks in the SEC. So those are some of my takeaways.
Yeah, no, I echo some of that. I think obviously the media has covered some of the elephants in the room. One was being the Pac-12 going 13-0 offensively. They look, and the Pac-12 has always been offensively excellent.
Hmm.
I mean, for 20, 30 years, they have always fielded some tremendous offensive teams. But I think there's more of an uptick this year in the quarterback play. Offensively, it's going to be really fun to watch that conference. I know it's their last year. I know a lot of people kind of have some hard feelings about that. There's some proud programs that are going to be moving on. But man, they really looked good this week, and that was one of the takeaways. Just the offensive firepower. Those games, Pac-12 at night is going to be some must-see football. I know we're going to be up late probably talking about it, but some of those games are going to be extremely exciting. One team in particular, of course, because I feel like it's only fair. There was a lot of conversation about the University of Colorado.
Yeah.
Comments from Dion about FSU, set that aside. I mean, there's a lot of commentary about what type of program he was going to have in Colorado, how they were going to look. And I watched that game, and I watched it with kind of a clear mind, and I didn't want to put out any official statements on what I thought was going to happen. And I walked away impressed with the organization, particularly on offense. Shedeur Sanders looks the part. I mean, Dion said that he was really good, and you kind of take it with a grain of salt because you're like, okay, this is his son. But Shedeur did work with Tom Brady. And that's one thing I think people haven't given Dion credit. Dion talks a lot of smack, talks a lot of noise, but he has never not delivered. And even at FSU, I mean, you know this and I know this,
Hmm.
he was one of the hardest workers there. The guy was
He was.
there early. The guy left late. He talked his talk, but he backed it up. He talked a lot of talk about what he was going to do at Colorado. Said, we're coming. And, they're here. They're going to be a problem in the Pac-12. That offense looks awesome. Those players look awesome. There's not a more talented kid in the country than Travis Hunter. I know you know him
Yep.
personally and covered his recruitment. So
Hmm.
that's a huge takeaway for me, Colorado. I'm really intrigued to see them. Initially, when I looked at their schedule it looked kind of like, well, this might be like a 6-6 type schedule. I don't know that I think that anymore. Looking at what they did to a decent TCU team, a team that played for national championship, obviously got barnstormed, but they were there and they beat a really good Michigan team on the way. That's an impressive win. So that's a huge takeaway for me. And I echo the SEC. I think the SEC is wide open this year. LSU obviously had a rough matchup with Florida State. Florida State looks the part. That's another takeaway. But I don't really know who I think is the favorite in the SEC. I think Georgia's got a lot of pressure to try to do a three-peat, almost unheard of today. I think a lot of people have buried Alabama, and I think that's probably premature. Jay Milroe looked outstanding. There's probably not a more physical specimen at the quarterback position than him. He was throwing BBs all over the field. It's Middle Tennessee State, but Middle Tennessee State whooped the hell out of Miami last year. And Miami's always everybody's kind of sexy pick to kind of, do something. And Middle Tennessee State handled them last year, and Alabama had them first game and really kind of crushed them. A&M looked good. Georgia, until further notice, is going to be at the top for me, but I'm not sure that Georgia beats in Alabama if they play this weekend. You know what I mean? So those are some of the takeaways. I echo some of the sentiment that you have. We run down the scores here, and we'll do this every week. We'll just go through our top 25 scores, and if there's a non-top 25 game that's worth mentioning and talking that has some national relevance, we'll get into that as well. Talking about the Thursday game, and chime in. Obviously, we're vested to see what Florida is going to do. I personally do not like the University of Florida, but I am very respectful of them. They are a top football program, just historically. They're excellent. They've always been excellent. They have some of the best athletes in the country. They're a very proud fan base. They are monetarily backed like no other. And you just always have that expectation that any year could be a year where they put it together. And so there was a lot of intrigue watching the game Thursday. I know we spoke about it. Utah smacked them around. That game wasn't close. Utah was missing 8 starters, didn't have the quarterback, had no problem with the Gators. We talked about the concern with Graham Mertz being the quarterback, being a game manager there. And I know Ricky Pearsall and Etienne, they've got some players on offense, but, man, it just looked like this is a far cry from the Gator standard. And we're getting farther and farther away from when that standard was last met. I mean, you're talking about 15 years now since Florida has fielded a national contending team. And I know that the other in-state programs, our program, Florida State, we've been down in the dumps and we've taken our licks and been kicked while we were down. But Florida has been down for a while. And it looks like another year where they're going to really have to find themselves. And that game stuck out to me. You got any comments on the Florida-Utah game? 24-11, Utah came away with the win.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that was the worst negative that I would be the most concerned with Florida is I just felt their offensive line was just dreadful. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't keep anybody off their back. I thought Graham, did okay. I think he had a bad throw as far as a pick. I mean, he missed some throws, but overall, I think he did enough to put them in position to help them. But that offensive line's terrible. They couldn't stop anything as far as the big deep ball. I think really set the tone. As soon as they hit that one, I think they were behind the 8 ball. And Florida's the type of team that I don't think this team can get behind, because then they start going one-dimensional, and the strength of their team is running the ball. So when they get away from that, they got to control the game, and so they have to come back. It's going to be tough, and that's going to be tough when you have to lean on your offensive line to protect the guy, and they look like the biggest weakness of that team. And I also, my other takeaway in that game is I really did not like their game plan overall, just the way they attacked. I just didn't like what Napier was doing. I thought it was really surprising, just the way they decided to attack Utah. It just didn't make any sense. They have great edge guys, so why would you try to pass when you got a new offensive line and you got questions about them? So you're gonna put your biggest weakness onto their biggest strength, which is edge rushing, pass rushing. So thought they should have run the ball a lot to set the tone, and I think they just really got off the track, and then they tried to combat that. But I think I just don't think they know what their identity is, and I think the poor offensive line is going to make it probably a tough year for them if that doesn't improve.
Yeah, Florida's got some things to figure out. I'm not ready to bury them yet. It does look like this is going to be a pretty strict learning curve. They've got Tennessee in a couple of weeks. That game should be in Gainesville, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So it'll be an opportunity. still one of the toughest places in America to play. I always have
It
respect
is.
going in there.
It is.
If you've been to the Swamp, you know that place has a certain energy. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get that together. I still feel real high on Pearsall, still feel real high on Etienne.
But yeah,
They've got some players on defense. They've got some young kids. I know Coach Napier's kind of got his plan and his process kind of working, but it's going to be slower than a lot of Gator faithful are going to want. And moving on to the other team in the SEC East, the king of college football right now, two-time defending champs, the Georgia Bulldogs, 48-7 over UT Martin. Not much of an opponent that they had. They kind of just sleptwalked through it, and they just completely overmatched them. There's not a whole lot to talk about other than maybe concerns with the quarterback going forth. They're not going to get challenged too often, and not for a few weeks. But do you
yeah,
have concerns with the quarterback play at all?
yeah. I've known Carson a long time. Carson Baxter, starting quarterback, Bowles High School in Jacksonville. So I've known him for a while, and he's kind of the guy that's been in the waiting in the background for when Stetson was there. But I didn't really see a lot as far as what I saw as far as command of the offense. So I think there's a lot of questions I have with him. What are you going to do when people start taking stuff away as far as the run? Are you going to be able to do it, or are they going to have to lean on this defense every game to carry them and then hope you make enough plays that you can be successful? I think there's some valuable questions about can he handle that moment of because I think Stetson got them out of a lot of situations because of his savviness, his IQ, his football IQ, understanding when there's the time to check, when there's time to attack, middle of the field, and when there's time to get out of a run, get out of a pass. So I think Stetson did a lot of things that I think probably Georgia fans take for granted that he was so good at, and that's why they won championships and back-to-back ones because one, they had talent, but two, you got to have quarterback is. I say it all the time. It's the one position I think you have to get right. You can't have a quarterback that's limiting your team or it just affects everything the wrong way. And even if you do have a quarterback, it doesn't guarantee you're going to win championships. But I don't think you have much of a chance if you don't have a guy that you can count on at quarterback that you have to lean on because that guy's touching the ball every play. He's the only guy on offense that's touching the ball every play. So I think that's my question mark with them is like, what are you going to do when you face like the Tennessees on the road or somebody tough and difficult that maybe takes away your run and they're going to force you to beat them. So he's going to have some games where he makes some key passes. And can he do it? Yeah, I think he can do it. He has the talent. He's a bigger sized kid than what Stetson was, but I think the questions are certainly there and they're valuable as far as inexperience of what he has coming in that starting quarterback position.
Yeah, Georgia for me, I just see the talent across the board. I see the depth across the board, and it's like we said, man. When you step up to the plate and you accomplish what they have, even though they got tested. I mean, the Buckeyes had them beat. I thought outplayed them, but Georgia found a way to scratch it and win. And then when they got their opportunity in that championship game for second year in a row, they didn't miss. So Georgia, I think, will figure it out. It'll be interesting to see that quarterback play going forward. Moving on to the other team in the SEC that is going to really be, shaking the trees here is going to be Alabama. Alabama goes 56-7 over Middle Tennessee. They score 14 points each quarter, dominant across the board. Milroe put a stamp on a potential Heisman, bid. I thought he looked outstanding. He's from right down the road here in Katy, Texas. Real excited about what he could possibly do with Alabama. They just kind of reload and they're there, and it just seems like it's going to be a crash course between those two. Anything stick out about Alabama? A lot of comments, a lot of people anointing Georgia, saying that they're the new standard. I still personally feel Alabama's the standard. I've been pretty outspoken about that because they've been doing it for so long. Give Georgia the respect. They're the kings of the hill right now. But when you're talking about the standard, something that's set it and forget it, that you can set your hat on, Alabama football is still that for me. Any comments on the Bama game?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, their defense looks stellar. Obviously, they're still Middle Tennessee State, but they're running the same stuff that you see that Nick's so good at running, and their DB play always is there to cause a lot of issues. And I think the Jalen Milfro thing's kind of interesting because that's kind of we were kind of seeing what guy was going to be the guy, for Alabama quarterback because there was several options. But I can understand that while he went with Milfro, he has that same like physical ability and skill set of what you saw with AR. He's got a big arm. Obviously, he's very inconsistent throwing the ball. I think AR is probably a little more consistent when as far as throwing, but he has that explosive ability when he takes off running that a lot of people have, and in the SEC, you kind of need that guy that can really just something that kind of separates him from other guys. So I think if he can make the passes, that's going to be a very dangerous team because their defense, I think, is going to keep them in a lot of games. But I mean, I never bet against a Nick Saban team because those teams are so well coached. They get developed throughout the year, and they're going to be a problem if they can stay healthy. And my question too is like with Milfro is like, do you have enough weapons around you at wide receiver that
Yeah.
you can get the job done when you start playing the big dogs like what are down the line with the SEC championship with Georgia, or when you play Tennessee and these other teams in the SEC, are you able to get enough out of your playmakers that you have? So I don't know. I'm not seeing like elite, flashy, crazy guys yet, like what they had when they had Jameson Williams and Mechie and all these guys. So I'm not seeing that yet. So I kind
Yeah.
of want to see if they get some guys that'll emerge. But I certainly love their quarterback position. I love the things that guy will bring because I think it's the best quality you have. We've seen that when Bryce was there that you got to have a guy that keeps plays alive, and those are kind of the guys that Nick seems to lean towards more to keep plays alive because he usually has so many playmakers. But I think really it's going to come down to can Milrow make these throws when they play the big boys? Are you going to turn the bar or stuff like that? Because I think his athletic ability, he's probably the most athletic dude in that conference as a quarterback position.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think he's gonna make plays. It's just, are you going to do enough that's going to hurt the team with turnovers? And so I think that's really the key for Alabama. But I think they're going to be right there. I agree with you. You cannot count them out. They're definitely one of the top teams in the league. And just because Georgia's won two in a row, still like people forget. People want to say, well, this team's won two championships in a row. Yeah, but when you're starting over with quarterbacks, it's a brand new season and nobody cares about like, oh, what you did last year. It's about now. And so I think there's a lot of questions as far as about the quarterback position in the SEC this year. But if Milpro can make those throws, I think they're going to be a tough out to beat.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the stat line real quick, and they did have three receivers that had touchdowns apiece: Isaiah Bond, Jermaine Burton, Amari Black. I forget which one of those kids transferred from Georgia. I guess the main concern I would have, not so much receiver. I think I see a little bit of depth. They got Kobe Prentice down there as well. I see some depth at wide receiver for them. Who's their stud back? Like, who's the Bama back? Because if they don't have, the Bama back, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Milrow to be a big part of the run game, which is going to subject him to a lot of hits. And I don't know that Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner can do what Milrow can do if he
Yeah.
goes down. So it'll be interesting to see how Nick Saban uses that offense. Bama, huge game. We'll get into it when we go through the preview at the end of the show. Huge game at home with Texas coming up. So I thought they look good. It'll be interesting going forward. Going to the Big Ten real quick. There's not a whole lot to talk about here. Michigan, free Harbaugh. They were putting it on for the coach up there. They slept walk 30-3. That
Yeah.
score is probably not indicative of what it really should have been. They pulled the starters and did their thing. A little sloppy in Michigan in the second half. And, of course, they had the defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter, was the interim head coach. And Harbaugh's kind of making a mockery of the self-imposed suspension by basically naming everybody and their grandmother a head coach for a half or a game. So I thought Michigan looked good. They showed some good depth. They won 30-3. The other front runner, well, I think there's three technically, and we'll get into the third, but the other front runner in the Big Ten, of course, Ohio State. I did not think they looked very good at all. I do not think that they have on par per standard Ohio State Buckeye quarterback play for the first time in a long time. The McCord kid looked very unsure. They scored 10 in the third in what was a 10-3 ball game. Indiana could not even complete a forward pass. They've literally got quarterback play that is so subpar that they can't even throw the football. And the Buckeyes really, really struggled. So I think there is a pretty big separation between Michigan and Ohio State, maybe 7 to 10 points right now. And then the third one I'll bring up and then let you kind of touch on all these Big Ten contenders. Penn State. I was very impressed with Penn State. I told you last year I thought Drew Allar is going to help level the playing field in the Big Ten for Penn State. Of course, they've got a big home game. Will probably be a whiteout with Michigan in the middle of the year. Penn State over West Virginia. West Virginia's not very good. They say it might be one of the worst West Virginia teams the past 10 years. But it was a rather thorough win, 38-15. Not too thrilled with Coach Franklin scoring a touchdown at the last second there. It looked kind of, it looked kind of bush league, but hey, it is what it is. You're out there, you got 60 minutes to play. He wants to get the snaps to the kids. So I'm not gonna beat him up too bad, but it did look a little bush league. But Penn State overall, I thought looked impressive. They got some good athletes. It's just going to be a matter of do they have enough? Do they have the depth relative to Ohio State, Michigan? So when you look at those three, given what you've seen week one, what's your takeaway on the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said from the start, I think Michigan is the team to watch. I mean, this is the most talented roster they've had, and God, I don't know how long. It's one of the best rosters. I love their roster. I love some of the coaches they have, and I just love their mindset, the way they're playing. I mean, go back to the same thing I've said: experienced quarterbacks. Like, JJ's been there. JJ knows how to handle this stuff. He's in control. He looks different. He looks a lot more confident throwing the ball, and then just the confidence is a lot better. And they have an incredible duo with him with the two running backs they have with Blake and drawing a blank here, the other guy, but I just
Donovan
love,
Edwards.
Yeah, Donovan. So I just love their makeup when you have that three-headed horse of three guys that are elite to that level, and that separates them from just every team in there. There's Penn State looks good. I watched a little bit of what they do. Obviously, he gave up some big plays with his first game, but and then Ohio State just they have really struggled just consistently moving the ball. We're going to see if that's a pattern, when you get to week two, but I don't really hold it too much against teams in the first week. But I mean, it is a concern because that's not a great Indiana team that you're playing, and it kind of goes back to what I've talked about where the inexperience at quarterback, that's the one position you got to make sure you got it right. And sometimes it takes a little longer to kick in. Kyle McCord's a very talented quarterback, but at the same time, it's going to take some time for them to settle in. And that's it's an offense too that I think they've gotten away from what they used to be. It was a lot more balanced with their running game and passing game. Now it's like every receiver wants to go to Ohio State, and it's like all receiving, passing. So I think they've gotten away from that balance of what Ohio State used to be when they had the big time running games when Zeke was there and Clark and all these guys they've had where they had so much balance, and I don't see the balance there with Ohio State, and so they're gonna have to figure out their quarterback situation because I would rate Michigan, Penn State for me, and then Ohio State just from what I saw so far.
Yeah.
I think there's some stuff they have to figure out.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I said before the beginning of the season, I felt like this could be a 9-3 season for Ohio State. A lot of people kind of, were taken back by that. And I know a lot of the pundits and Ohio State has earned the respect. And I know Michigan's on top of the Big Ten now, and that's good to see that they're able to get there and to challenge Ohio State. But Ohio State has run that conference for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
They have a recent championship in 2015. They went through Bama to get it. So they've earned their respect. But I think that this season is kind of a remnant of past work that they've put in, because I do not see a top 4 team in Ohio State right now. I do not see the potential to compete with some of these teams at the top right now. Now, can they get better? Is Marvin Harrison an absolute cheat code? Yes. They're going to have guys that are cheat codes, and they've got them every year, particularly at that position. They've got a tremendous defensive end. His name escapes me right now. They've got Mayan Williams and a couple running backs that are awesome. but top to bottom, I just don't see it. And it's going to be interesting. So I would also have Penn State ranked ahead of them. I'd have Michigan on top of the Big Ten, and we'll see who else can jump into the fray. Going to the Pac-12 now, you got USC hammers Nevada 66-14. Caleb Williams looks like an absolute video game player. Defending Heisman. He's got a great campaign going again. USC offensively looks like a juggernaut. Washington played a pretty game Boise State team. You like that Boise State team going in. Thought it'd be a more of a challenge than it was. Michael Penix from Tampa, I know you covered him. Coach Taggart almost got him. Didn't quite get him. And Florida State paid for it. Michael Penix is tearing it up at Washington. He looks phenomenal. Just more of the Pac-12's excellence at the quarterback position. 56-19 over Boise State. These games, these Pac-12 games are going to be a whole lot of fun. I particularly like defensive football, but I'm not immune to enjoying some high-powered offensive football. Washington and USC both bring it. Let's go down here, Oregon, and then I'll ask you to kind of comment on that. Oregon goes 81-7 over Portland. Let's go ahead and rope in Colorado. Colorado probably deserves their own little chunk, but I think we covered that at the beginning. Outstanding performance offensively from Colorado. They shut a lot of people up. Deion said, we're here. And they were. They came into TCU 45-42. Shedeur Sanders, to me, would be on a Heisman ballot if it were cast today. Set a school record, 510 yards. Looked the part. Again, we'll say with Deion, he talks a lot of crap, but the man has a long track record of backing it up. Shedeur is working with Tom Brady over the season. He looks extremely sharp. The practice reports were spot on with him. He looks like the real deal. We'll see if they can keep it up. But week one, he looked outstanding. And then some of the other Pac-12 action. Let's see if we've got one more. A guy we've talked about a lot because I liked him when he was at Clemson. Oregon State's DJ Ugalele had a very good game. 42-17, they won over San Jose State. Just another example of some offensive prowess in the Pac-12. So we've covered about 5 or 6 games in the Pac-12. Just if you can just combine that, what do you see out of the Pac-12 and who stands out?
Yeah, it's. I mean, you have quarterback play. I mean, they have some of the best quarterbacks in there. Caleb Williams, USC, even Cam Rising. We haven't even talked about him from Utah. He hasn't even played, and he's supposed to be back in a couple of weeks. And then Shedeur Sanders was phenomenal. I've covered him. He's from Texas. When he was out there, Deion brings a lot of spice and charisma, but his kid's good. He don't suck. So he knows what he's doing. I think a lot of these teams will throw up a lot of points. Bo Nix from Oregon, although I don't like some of the stuff Bo does as far as just all the scrambling around and all the silliness. But I think overall he's all these quarterbacks are really good. I love Michael Penix. I think the team for me that it would probably be a surprise just because I don't have faith in USC in that defense. They just don't seem to put much emphasis on their defense. So their defense worries me. I think Caleb Williams is the best player in that league. There's no question, one of the best players in the whole country. But I think overall, I don't trust their defense. I think Oregon's up there, but I don't know if I trust them either as far as the defense. And so for me, I come down to Utah and Washington for me because I love both of those teams the way they play defense. And if I was picking a dark horse, I kind of like what UCLA's doing with their defense. They got a lot of good edge rushers. Yes. I love what they do. Now Dante Moore seems to be going to get that job right now as far as quarterback. So he looks really, really flashy, and he certainly can add a lot to that offense. And we know Chip Kelly knows offense, so I kind of like them as a dark horse. But yeah, I like Washington and Utah personally, just by watching those teams. I think we talk about there isn't a lot of defense, but there is some defense if you really dig into some of these Pac-12 teams. And I think for Utah and Washington, I think they have the best ingredients for the defense. So I think those are teams I would pick.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I've always said this. Utah to me is like the Michigan of the Pac-12. In contrast to the Ohio States and some of the teams that score a lot, Utah is so sound. Coach Whittingham does such a phenomenal job there, and it's a contrast, right? Like Utah can score; they'll put 60 up on you. They did it a couple times last year. They put a spanking on USC's butt twice. But Utah also brings the hats, man. They bring 11 hats to the ball every play, and they play defense. In Washington, is another school that will bring some hats to the
Yep.
to the party, and they play defense. So it's interesting to see kind of the contrast because those teams can score, but they also put a lot of emphasis on the defensive side of the ball. And I think I agree with you. Those teams seem pretty complete. It'll be interesting to see if having that defensive prowess is going to result in them being successful in the conference when it looks like the rest of the conference is just chucking it up. I did watch that UCLA game. They played Grayson Allen and the
Yeah.
Coastal Carolina, what do
Yeah.
I call them? The Chanticleers.
Yeah.
Good game. Dante Moore came in, I think, midway through the second half, and his
Mm-hmm.
first throw was like a 65-yard BB. Looked good his first couple drives. I think that was actually his second drive, led a
Yeah.
touchdown drive his
Yeah.
first one. But then when they started pressuring him, he started to get rattled a little bit. He's a
Yeah.
super prized
Yeah.
freshman out of Detroit, heavily recruited. I know you've covered him. Florida State went
Mm-hmm.
after him. Michigan really went after him, didn't get him. He's got a boatload of talent, but he's going to have a bit of a learning curve from what I saw. I'm not ready to put him in the bushel with Shadur or
Yeah.
with
Agree.
Rising or with Caleb or with Penix or any of those, or certainly not Bo Nix or even DJ yet. But he is
Mm-hmm.
going to be he's going to be a damn good player when his time comes in. UCLA is going to be a sneaky team. They're another team that played some defense because that Grayson Allen kid tears it up, and he threw 2 picks. He's only thrown 8 in his career, threw 2 against UCLA. So
Yeah.
add UCLA defensively to that group of Washington and Utah out there in the Pac-12
Yeah.
that plays a little defense.
I agree.
It'll be interesting to see. If now we take it down south a little bit, a school that I've been bullish on, and maybe it's because I'm down here and I deal with a lot of Aggies and Longhorns. Texas. I think this year Texas is different. They have a shot. 37-10 over Rice. A lot of people talked about the offense going in. First half didn't look as sharp. Quinn Ewers finishes 19 of 32, 60 and 3 tutties. We know Xavier Worthy, what he can do. He's elite, went 7 for 90.
Yeah.
Texas has players. They're going to have to replace Bijan Robinson because Bijan's about to make a lot of people a lot of money in fantasy football. But one thing that sticks out about Texas, they played 30 kids defensively. They looked damn impressive defensively. I know it's Rice, but just watching those kids fly around, the DBs in coverage was sharp. The D lineman was getting pressure seemingly every play. Linebackers flowing, were fast, athletic. They have a huge one in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. They should have won last year in Austin. It happens. Alabama ended up making some plays down the stretch, but I feel good about this Texas team. And when we talk about this other Texas team, I know they wouldn't want to be called the other Texas team. Much respect and love for Jimbo Fisher. It's my guy. A&M, big season this year. Jimbo has to come through and prove his worth, and I think he will. They start off 52-10 over New Mexico. Weigman is from out here in Cyprus, and he had a good game, went 18 of 23, 236 and 5 tutties. A&M looked good. They looked improved. They've trimmed that roster. Maybe they've got rid of some bad apples and some of the cancer that was plaguing the roster. When we're talking about these Texas schools, TCU, you're off the map now because you got your butt kicked at home.
Yeah.
What are you seeing from the Texas schools? What do you like? What don't you like? What questions do you have?
I like the front for Texas. I really like the way their front four is and the way they get after. Even if it's Rice, you can tell things of the way guys get pressure and the way they do it, and they're not afraid to blitz. They're not afraid to use different multiple packages to throw you off and confuse you. So I really like that front. I love Worthy. I certainly like they seem to always have quarterbacks that are always there that can put you in position to win, and I think they're ready. And Sark knows offense, but I don't know who their defensive coordinator is, but I think they've really focused a lot on their defense. As far as A&M, I love that team. I love what I saw Saturday. I know it's just New Mexico, but I mean, you saw so many more explosive plays. It was the biggest line I've seen them have, and then you saw much more bigger push than what I saw when I saw the first 2-3 games of A&M last year. They weren't getting a push. Had a ton of guys hurt. Now these guys are healthy. Evan Stewart's one of the best receivers in the country. I love Weigman, what he's doing. They have a hot shot running back who I love a lot in Lavian Moss. That is phenomenal. So I I love their nucleus of what they did, and they added Bobby Petrino as far as offense coordinator, and Jimbo cleaned up some things as far as the coaches of what they have there, and I think they're much more in control. You feel like when they play now that they're a threat to score anytime they have the ball, and you didn't feel that way last year. We were at the Miami game, nobody could score. It
No.
was basically Devin the Chain, and that was it. And so I think I go back to the quarterback play. What I talk about, like it all leads with your quarterback play, and I think they have that this year. They have Shamar Stewart, who's a hotshot freshman defensive end that I love. That's phenomenal. That I know Miami and a lot of top schools wanted to keep home here, but I think this team's really special based on just we talk about rosters. We mentioned FSU the other night, just the roster, and I think Jimbo's done a good job getting the guys out of there that aren't focused on the style of what he wants, the fits there, and I think he's got the right fits in there now. And now they have obviously a big game in Miami that's non-conference that they got to
Huge
go in
game.
there, and I think I feel good about their chances just because of how the roster sets up and just what they do with that front. And but overall, I think this team with Jimbo's really is the one to keep an eye on. I'm not saying they're going to be one of the favorites, but I like how their rosters matched up because of the multiple playmakers they had at receiver, and I like this team, and I can't go against Jimbo too much when he has all the coaches in place of where they're supposed to be, and he has his players and his quarterback. He's dangerous. Yeah, he's a threat to lose some stupid game that he shouldn't lose, but I think overall, if he has his team set, they are very difficult to handle when he has that quarterback. When he has the quarterback, he's very difficult to go against.
100%. Jimbo Fisher has proven that he's a national championship coach. He has his fallbacks and he has his imperfections, but this Texas A&M team feels different. The A&M folks that I've come into contact with and talked to feel a little different. There's some pressure to perform this year. There's expectations, and it just feels like a year where A&M is going to put it together. Remains to be seen. We'll see. Same thing with Texas. It just feels like the talent's in place. Sark has a group there that's got an opportunity on Saturday. What a treat we get with Texas at Bama next week. I mean, going to the SEC next year, that's just a treat. That's just to sit down, get yourself an adult beverage or bottle of water, if you're on a health kick, and just sit back and enjoy some good hard-hitting football because there's a lot of talent on that field. Moving down to a couple teams that are in the mix. They're in the mix and they've got a shot. Tennessee 49-13 over Virginia. Virginia's obviously getting over a tragedy that happened. I don't know all the details, but they had a tragedy that took the life of a couple of their players. I hate to hear that. I hate to see that. So they're playing with a lot of emotion. Tennessee went out there, handled business, scored 7 in the first, 14 in each of the following three quarters, 49-13. Joe Milton was 21-30, had 3 scores. I believe he had 3 scores. Let me make sure I'm not lying to you. No, he had 2 scores. I take that back. He had 2 scores in the air, and then he had 2 scores on the ground, so he had 4. Joe Milton, a guy that I've got a chance to know personally from his time at Michigan, outstanding kid. Love that kid. I know we recruited him, Florida State. I'm happy to see this kid get a shot at a powerhouse school in Tennessee. Opportunity is abound. He's playing in front of 106,000 at Neyland Stadium. The kid is a good kid, and he's got a big heart, and he's got a big arm, and he's got a lot of talent. And I'm really excited to see what he can do at Tennessee. In a wide open SEC East, obviously behind Georgia, Tennessee looks like the team that could probably challenge Georgia. They've got that game in Neyland Stadium later on in the year. Georgia's schedule is not Tennessee's schedule. Tennessee's going to have some landmines they have to navigate, but that game could have a lot of implications. And the other team I wanted to kind of couple in because they're really similar to me is Notre Dame. Notre Dame plays Tennessee State. No competition for them. They blew them out of the water, 56-3. We talked about Notre Dame when they got Sam Hartman. He was a guy at Wake Forest that just really upset a lot of teams year after year. Florida State couldn't do anything with Sam Hartman. And he's at Notre Dame, 14-17, 194, 2 TDs, workmanlike performance. He was terrific in Ireland last week against Navy. Notre Dame is a team I flirted with putting them in my Final Four prediction. I probably have them just missing the Final Four. really like this team, really like what Coach Marcus Freeman, probably one of my favorite coaches just in college football, from just the way he carries himself, class act.
Yep.
I love the fact that Notre Dame's giving him a shot. And I love the fact that Marcus Freeman is doing the work and he's got this team improved. They are a national contender. They do look the part. Tennessee and Notre Dame, what do you think about those two programs this year?
Yeah, I think Tennessee. I mean, I think Notre Dame is the team that, out of those two, that really catches my attention because of Notre Dame hasn't had a quarterback. Like,
No,
they haven't had a
not like
quarterback.
this.
That's the biggest problem they've had in the last 4 years. They don't have a quarterback that can control everything. You know he's going to put you in best position. Their defense is usually almost good every year. I think Marcus will have them ready. That's what Marcus's calling card is defense. So I think they'll be very good. I think they'll be right on the cusp of pushing for that playoff spot. So I like what they're doing. I just think we don't know what they are because they haven't played anybody that's really going to challenge them to a certain degree. I think obviously that will pick up in the coming weeks. I think they play Duke coming up, who just upset Clemson. So I think that we'll kind of see a little bit as far as kind of where they're at. But I really like that team because of the quarterback play. I mean, I think quarterback's a game changer for that program, and getting Hartman for a year, I think that's really going to push them right on the edge of being the playoff. I think Tennessee. I love what Joe Milton's doing, but I watched a lot of that game when back over the weekend, and my question is, like, I love what they have at the running back. They got a nice combo group with those guys. I feel very good. There's a lot of experience there, but my question is, who do you have to replace Jalen Hyatt? Like, because that's a big loss. I
Yeah,
mean, you're talking about 20 something yards a catch. So
he was
I
unbelievable.
I think and they
They
and I
they
think
got a
they
dude named Squirrel. They got a dude named Squirrel White. I'm not kidding. That's his name.
Yeah, so I think they're going to have to find who their playmakers are. I don't think it was like last year where they had so many playmakers at receiver. It wasn't just Jalen, and they had several guys in there that were really good. And now I think they have to replace them with some young guys. So my question of them is, like, who's going to be
Yeah,
your playmaker, and then are we going to what Joe Milton are we going to see? Or
yeah,
is going to be the Joe that we've seen, the end of the year when they hammered Clemson and really started growing as a quarterback, or are we going to see the guy that we kind of saw that really struggled with timing, ball location, putting air on the ball, stuff like that. So I think if Joe continues to grow, yeah, that's going to be a team that we're going to talk about all year. That's going to be in the top 10, and certainly going to be a problem because I really like their defense. I think their defense is stout. I think it's a good group. I think they've done a really good job building that foundation with that defense. So I think I do like their defense. I'm just curious to see what Joe does, and then also what playmakers are going to have to replace those star guys like Jalen Hyatt. So I love both of those teams. Obviously, I think a little higher probably Notre Dame just because of what Hartman brings and how that rounds out their team. But I think both of them are going to be in the top 10 firmly.
yep. They're going to be in the mix. I think they have some shots. They both play some pretty tough schedules, so they're going to have plenty of opportunities to turn some heads. Quick rundown on Kansas State. They blasted Southeastern Missouri 45-0. Wisconsin, workmanlike performance 38-17 over Buffalo. They had a couple running backs go over 100 yards there. Quarterback play was a little rough there. Wisconsin will be an interesting team. They've always got some good athletes up front, both sides of the line. Line of scrimmage is where football's won. Wisconsin's always solid there, so it'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
They do have a home game against Ohio State. Going to be really interesting to see, what old Coach Luke does against his former alma mater there. But they're going to run the ball. They look pretty decent. Oklahoma, it's Arkansas State. Arkansas State does not have James Blackman. He's gone. So they're rebuilding, and Oklahoma State absolutely blasted them 73-0. It's another program getting ready to make a jump to the SEC. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of they're kind of a wildflower, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan Gabriel, I know you're familiar with Dylan Gabriel, had a great
Yeah.
day, 19-22, 308.2 scores. They've got talent everywhere, particularly on offense. They looked pretty decent. And then rounding out, there's a couple other scores here. Ole Miss 73-7, not much to talk about there. Jackson Dart went crazy. Lane
Yep.
Kiffin's going to dial it up. They played Mercer 73-7 over Mercer. Tulane 37-17 over South Alabama. Iowa 24-14 over Utah State. Cade McNamara makes his debut there. Was okay. Was not all world, was not setting the world on fire, but was decent, managed it. One game I would like to cover a little bit is North Carolina in a neutral site in the Duke's Mayo Classic, 31-17 over South Carolina. Thorough, 9 sacks from the defense from North Carolina. Obviously, we know that May is a Heisman contender. He's going to be one of the top picks in the draft coming out.
Right.
He was 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. I mean, South Carolina put a little pressure on him, did make some plays. What was your takeaway from that North Carolina game, especially since we're going to get to another game here in a moment that just finished a couple hours ago? North Carolina's looking like they're going to be in the mix for the ACC title game, which, of course, will be in the state of North Carolina, be a home game for them. What were your thoughts on North Carolina, South Carolina? Another SEC team, SEC East. I mean, you had a shot, neutral site against North Carolina. You had a shot against Utah, down 8 starters, down a quarterback. It didn't go well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, they had. I mean, I'm impressed with the good work that they've done on their defensive front. They're using different blitz packages, the way they attack teams. I like some of their edge guys. I think they've added a lot compared to years past where they used to be just like a doormat of teams of just scoring so many crazy points. And now they've added a lot. Got a former Knoll over there, Mario Gaynor, who had a really good game, 2 sacks. But I think overall, I like what they're doing defensively because I think it's rounding their team out a little more. And I think, after what I saw tonight, they definitely seem to be one of the biggest threats in the ACC. Drake May is ridiculously good. Certainly can pass. I think the question for them is, are you going to be able to run the ball when you play somebody good and the good teams when you match up with Notre Dame and these other teams that you play? Are you going to be able to run the ball, and is that going to affect Drake May? Because if you make him one-dimensional, yeah, Drake's phenomenal, but I don't care what quarterback you are. If you make him one-dimensional, it's really challenging for that team at the college level because of the athletes you're dealing with. That it's going to be tough to consistently put up big numbers. The 2 picks, obviously South Carolina does really well. In the secondary they make plays, but that's something they'll have to clean up. But I still think they're one of the top teams that I've seen as far as in the ACC. That's a big win for Mac Brown and his program. 100th win overall, as a coach. So I think that speaks volumes to his longevity of what he's done. But I think overall they got to find a running back that's going to take some pressure off Drake. But I do think that team's definitely going to compete for the ACC title. I think they're one of the teams right now that outside of FSU, they were probably the best, most impressive performance that I saw from the ACC.
Well, speaking of FSU, we've only got a couple more games to discuss before we get into week 2. We did a long breakdown about the Noles dominating victory, particularly in the second half. 45-24 over the LSU football Tigers, top 5 team in the country. Returning Jaden Daniels, Heisman candidate. Brian Kelly had a lot to say before the game, said he was going to beat the heck out of Florida State. You were at that game. Just real quick, we've already kind of hammered this out thoroughly. Florida State looks for real. And it's easy for us to say that because we're FSU guys, but this looks like finally Florida State is really for real. I mean, they covered all the bases. They checked all the boxes. They look big enough. They look fast enough. They look athletic enough. They've got skill position. The only concern that I'll have, and then I'll turn it to you, is I was not impressed with the way we ran the ball until the 4th quarter. I was impressed with the way we leaned on and ran the ball, but early on in that game, it looked like we could not run the ball against against LSU. And that was a little concerning, particularly in the A-gap, B-gap. I want to see that run established a little more thoroughly. And I get trying to preserve Jordan Travis because LSU, they have a fast striker defense. You don't want to expose your quarterback to a lot of contact, but the way the running game was struggling, I would have liked to see us utilize Jordan a little more. And I was a little disappointed seeing that run game. So that'll be something to focus on going forward because we're going to play some other fronts. Miami's got a lot of athletes up front. Clemson damn sure has a lot of athletes up front. We're going to face some other teams. Pittsburgh's going to have some guys. Florida's going to be nasty in the swamp. So we're going to have some other challenges to run the football Was there anything that concerned you? Obviously, overall, phenomenal performance.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Coach Norvell and the program. 45-24 really should have been 45-17. We put some third stringers in there, and they got burned on a touchdown. But anything concerning about the Noles going forward?
I don't think there's anything like concerning. I think it's more stuff they have to clean up, like and maybe some stuff they have to adjust. As far as the running game, I would have liked to see more of Rodney Hill and Keziah Holmes than what I saw from Trey Benson. I think they put too much on Trey, and I think
Yeah.
Trey, you want Trey to be the guy. Trey is the back, but I want to see some more. I want to see more of a mixture of the running backs with Keziah, and I think that kind of might have taken some pressure off them. I thought Toa Philly did a great job when he was in there, but I think I want to see more of a mixture of Hill and Keziah Holmes and even some of the other guys, just more of a rotation. And I think that will come. That's why I say it's not a concern because first game of the year, you got to go with the guys that have been there that you trust the most. And so I think that running game will you see a lot more balance and a lot more guys getting in there as the season goes on. But when you're playing that first game, there's a lot of pressure to make sure you put guys in the right spots and don't put somebody where they're in an uncomfortable situation. I think the other thing too is like Jordan when he can scramble, he can get around. We know that he can move around, but he has got to take the yards when they're giving them to him. Like when they're giving you when you roll out and the pocket's open, if the guy's not open downfield, you don't just throw the ball and just try to force it in there where your receiver's going to make a great catch. Did that several times I did that once with Destin Hill. Did that a few times with even Keon Coleman, who had a phenomenal game. But he's got to take what they're giving him. They're not asking you to go 40 yards. They're just asking you to get the 20 yards, get out of bounds, get down, slide, whatever you're doing. So I think those are things that I think they have to clean up. I think outside of that, I think overall the pressure was there. I think once they got their legs, they were settled in. So there's nothing really concerning. Those are just things that those two things I think they have to clean up more and get better at. And I just think Jordan has to trust what's there. If the pass is not there, don't take it. If the run is there, take what's there and then go from there and do what you are. Be who you are. You're the most electrifying out quarterback in the country as far as athleticism. You can get out of plays that nobody else can get out of. So, I understand what he was trying to do in that game, but I think sometimes you're pressing a little bit where you're trying to force something where you're trying to show that you can pass the ball when it's not about that. It's about getting the most out of every play. And I think that's kind of the things I think Jordan can clean up.
Yeah, really excited to see what the Knowles will do going forward. They've got a big game in Death Valley in a couple weeks, which brings us to our last game of the weekend. You told me earlier today, you said, Rico, I got a feeling about Duke tonight. You're like, I'm not going to call. It's going to be anything. I just got a feeling about Duke tonight. And I was like, you know what? I don't disagree with you because Duke last year I think they only lost 4 games. I guess they went 9-4. Not sure if they won a
Yeah,
bowl game or
yeah,
not.
yeah. The
Um,
United games.
and they did not lose a game by more than 1 score. Blew out Miami, blew out a couple other teams, blew out UCF in a bowl game. That's who they beat. And they have some sneaky good players. They got Mike Alco coming in as the head coach.
Yep.
And, I took a nap as I'm watching this game. I kind of woke up. We'll see. Okay, they're up 3-0. Okay, 6-0. Okay, Clemson gets a turnover now, 7-6. I'm like, okay, this kind of feels like a sloppy game, but Clemson will come around. Well, they didn't. Duke puts the hammer on Clemson, 28-7, and running down these stats, Clemson did move the ball. They finished with 422 total yards. Duke had 374. A couple things that are alarming though. 43 pass attempts for Cade Klubnik, and a lot was said. I was really bullish on DJ Uiagalelei staying the quarterback at Clemson. I thought he gave him a chance to win. Big body, 6'4", 6'5", can really help you out in the run game. And I feel like Clemson has got a great offensive line. That's where they make their money, running the ball. Will Shipley's excellent. He's going to be a terrific NFL player. And they've got several other running backs. But they threw the ball 43 times tonight. And they averaged 4.9 yards per pass. Because of what you said, they're checking the ball down. It just feels like this Clemson offense has been in a bit of a rut for a couple years, and it just does not feel like they're going to be what we've expected them to be when they had Deshaun and they had Trevor. They just don't have that kind of offense right now. They get burned tonight, 28-7. Another thing that's alarming is I'm looking at this box score. You know, Mike, they gave up 6.6 yards a carry to Duke.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not disrespecting Duke because Duke can play. 6.6 yards a carry to Duke. There should be some alarms going off in Clemson, South Carolina right now, because that is not standard. If there's anything I would hang my hat on about Clemson, it would be elite quarterback play and it would be defensive line. And that looks like that is not the case this year. They get smacked 28-7. It wasn't competitive in that second half. Duke was by far the better club. What are your thoughts on Clemson? Because we got a big game coming up on the 23rd. Hopefully we'll be in attendance. And that's looking like I don't know how big of a game it's really going to be. I mean, Clemson's going to be dangerous in a spoiler role. Man, they did not look good tonight. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on Clemson?
they were the most disappointing performance as far as what I saw this weekend of teams that are in the top 10. They're supposed to be good. They were the most disappointing to me. There's so many issues to go through. First, they're leaning so much on Shipley to do everything. The dude does kickoffs. He's
Yeah.
running the ball. He's hitting the ball off to him. They're throwing dump offs to him. They're doing check downs. It's
He's
like
like
you're doing,
McCaffrey.
yeah, you're just doing too much with this guy. I love Antonio Williams at receiver, but outside of that, they don't have the dudes. And I think they've fallen kind of low into, hey, we're Clemson, we got some guys, and they think every guy is going to just work out. And then, I mean, tonight, they turned the ball over 3 times inside the 15-yard line. It's like you can't beat anybody turning the ball over and fumbling the ball, that many times. And the other thing that's probably the most alarming is the quarterback play with Klubnik, where he looks so frantic, like the game is so fast. It reminds me of what I saw from Jordan Travis in like 2020 and 2021, where everything's fast. It's not slowed down. It's like you don't see a guy that's calm. When they had DJ there a year ago, who's now at Oregon State, you seem like, okay, yeah, he messes up some, but there's a calmness to what he's doing. Everything's slowed down. He's checking. He's making sure. Klubnik just seems like he's going through everything so fast, and it's like one look, bam, I'm throwing the ball, or one look and I'm taking off running. It's like that's just not Clemson. That's not what we're used to, what we're seeing. And then overall, the defense is just giving up gash plays that they have not given up that we've seen in the past. Especially nothing against Duke. Duke won 9 games, but Clemson has better athletes from across the board if you look at the roster. So overall, we're just not seeing the explosive plays from Clemson, and we kind of saw this chink last year when went into their bowl game and Tennessee blew them out the water. Clemson doesn't usually lose bowl games like that. I mean, they take a lot of pride in those games. So I think there's a lot of issues. I think defense is partly one of them. We knew there was going to be a drop off when Venables left because Venables was a big part of what that defense is doing, and now you're starting to see chinks and just everywhere surrounding that team. And I think their biggest concern though is that quarterback position, because if that doesn't improve, obviously there's a very good chance they'd lose to Florida State, but they're probably going to lose to a couple other teams if that doesn't get fixed. And it's a problem. And we kind of saw it last year when they played South Carolina. South Carolina came to their house and they beat them, and then then they lose the bowl game, and then now we see this game tonight. That's like 3 straight games where you're just not seeing the Clemson standard of what we watched before, and it's kind of like they're going through the growing pains of what Florida State had to go through when the talent started changing, and you're not getting the right guys in there that they're going to fit your program. And I think they're not being able to attack people the way they're used to attacking them.
Yeah, I think there's some fire alarms going off for Clemson right now. We'll see if they respond. I will say this: I'm not ready to bury them because I do think Clemson has enough talent. They have enough pride that they're going to be very dangerous in a spoiler role. I do not think this is the last game Clemson's going to lose this year. I I'm not sure that the Florida State game is the only game on the schedule that they're in danger of losing either. I think there's several teams that can really challenge them. Beginning of the season, I thought that the Notre Dame game being there in Death Valley was going to be tough. I still think it'll be tough, but I think at this point, Notre Dame looks like a much better football team. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what Dabo does. He's a championship coach. He's won a couple natties there. He's
Yep.
high quality. He knows how to fix things. We'll see if he's got enough in the cupboard to fix this Clemson team. Super shock. Congratulations to Coach Elko and Duke.
Yep.
They're not just a basketball school, ladies and gentlemen. They're rushing the field and they're beating a top 10 team in the first week of the season. That brings us to our top five. And I'll reel off my top five and why, Mike, and give you a chance to kind of reveal yours.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the Georgia Bulldogs, the defending champs. I think that they have the depth. I do think Carson Beck is serviceable right now. I don't think he's a barn burner. We'll see when he gets live bullets. Georgia's got the first couple weeks of the season pretty much off. I think they've got Ball State next week. That's another tune-up game. So we're not going to see what Beck can do until third, fourth week of the season. I think they play South Carolina early, maybe week 3. But they're the champs, and I can't move them until I see some serious chinks, and I have not seen it. They're still the biggest, fastest, most talent-rich team in football, maybe with only Alabama being on par with them. So I've got Georgia number 1. Number 2, I have Florida State. Homer pick or not, I didn't think any team looked better than Florida State this year. No team looked more electric. No team faced a top 5 team. All these guys are playing cupcakes, including Michigan, playing cupcakes and walk-across games, high school opponents. Florida State played top 5 team and whooped the hell out of them, actually. So I've got the Noles at number 2, just based on what I've seen and what I think they can do the rest of the year. Number 3, I've got Alabama, because I think the question going in was whether or not Jalen Milroe was going to be able to carry the mail and be per standard. I think he looks very much Jalen Hurts-ish. And if you paid attention to the NFL, he's damn good. And Milroe looks the part. I've got Bama at number 3 because I just have faith in that talent and that depth. And with a quarterback like that, I think they're going to be a problem. And I'll also say I do think Alabama, at this point, right now, I would pick them to win the SEC. I'm comfortable saying that now. I know Georgia's won the last couple of years. I think Alabama will win the SEC. I've got them number 3 team in the country. Number 4, I have Michigan. Wasn't impressed with that second half. Looked sloppy. I know Coach Harbaugh's out there, but they have a lot of talent. They sat a lot of guys. I didn't see the amount of explosiveness that I wanted to see. I loved what I saw from J.J. McCarthy throwing the pill around. He looked very improved. I thought the running game looked like crap. They weren't able to gash their opponent the way that you would think that they would. So Michigan's got a little bit to prove. Right now, if I'm Michigan, I wouldn't want to see Georgia, FSU, or Alabama. I don't know that it would go well. But first game of the year, they're still a top 4 team, in my opinion. And then number 5, just because the offense is so damn explosive, and they've got the best player in America, in Caleb Williams, I've got USC. I do not have Ohio State there because I do not see it in that team this year. I think some of these teams would beat them comfortably. And I do think USC would be one of those teams because I don't think Ohio State would be able to stop them. I've got USC as my 5th team. Caleb Williams looks absolutely video game-ish. He looks better. He looks more mature. He looks more under control. That offense at USC, I don't know if there's a team in the country that can hold that offense under 35 points for a game. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. So that's my top 5, Mike. What would you change, or what's your top 5 looking like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the top. I agree with you. I would keep, for me, I would take Georgia. I mean, till somebody beats them. Yeah, I have a lot of questions about Georgia, but I'm not going to take them off the top podium until somebody beats them, until somebody shows me something different. I like them at 1. I differ on the rest of them. I like Michigan number 2 because I love that roster, and I want to put FSU up there. But here's the thing: Michigan's been there. Michigan's got to the playoff. You haven't got there.
Yeah.
We haven't seen you win a championship. You got no trophies. You haven't done anything yet. So I got Michigan number 2. I think FSU's number 3 because of what I saw this week. I like them a little better because I think they're very complete. I think we saw kind of some of their depth of what they can do, and I think there's still their best balls ahead of them where they played a really sloppy first half, and then the second half they had the best second half out of any team in the country. That's why I would put them in 3. I think Alabama would be 4 for me. I agree with you that I think odds on favorite as far as what I saw this week. Not saying they're going to win it. I'm just saying what I see right now, they look the best, as far as the
Yeah.
most complete team so far. So I would put them 4. And then in my 5th team, I'll be a little different. I'm going to go with Notre Dame because I think Notre Dame, I don't, now that Clemson, if Clemson continues to look like this, I think that's a
Yeah.
team that Notre Dame can
Yeah,
beat.
they're out.
And then I also think North Carolina is the biggest threat left on their schedule they would play. And if they beat them, I think they're a team that's going to be in there. And I really talk about the Sam Hartman effect, where I think that's something they haven't had. So I'll go with Notre Dame because they're more complete. I like their defense a little better. I totally agree with you about Caleb Williams and USC. They're going to score a lot. They're right there, but right now I'd have to say Notre Dame for me. So that's kind of my top 5.
Okay, yeah, and that's respectable. And I think Penn State will be up there. I just feel like Penn State has a pretty strong team, and I do think Notre Dame is a little better than Penn
Yep.
State right now. But I'm going to keep USC at the 5 just
There
because
you go.
I just don't think anybody can stop them. Looking at the week 2, just real quick, just jumping into week 2, games of note. Just scrolling down, a lot of people are playing some teams they're going to smack. Notre Dame's got a challenging game at NC State. That is not
Yep.
an easy stadium to play in. That's going to be an early game. Maybe upset alert there. Could be an upset alert there. I think if Notre Dame gets that game and looks good, we're going to really start talking about Notre Dame being a problem going forward. Notre
Yep.
Dame and NC State, that game kicks at 11 p.m. Central, 12 o'clock Eastern. Utah at Baylor would have been a lot more interesting if Baylor didn't get their butt kicked this weekend and lose their quarterback in the process. Utah probably is going to roll them.
Yep.
Scrolling down here, trying to find some other games of note. Ole Miss at Tulane could be fun. Both ranked
Hmm.
teams, kind of at the backside of the top 25. That's going to be interesting. Both those teams can score. I know Tulane's lost some coaches. I think they've got a coach that's at Miami now, but they still have some firepower there. That's going to be a good one. Probably one of the bigger games of the week. Not the biggest, but one of the big ones because a lot of storylines. Miami, we'll give you a little bit of the floor here. Miami's going to get the floor regardless because they're just a team that people will talk about no matter what. If
Hmm.
they're successful or not. Miami has a big opportunity here. They've got a home game against Texas A&M. Mario Cristobal has got to put it together. They have talent. There's expectations there. They've got them in the Hard Rock. It's this. I mean, I don't want to call it the home stadium because it's not on a campus, but it's where they play their home games. They've got an
Yep.
opportunity. Hopefully, they can pack the house, put a scene together. TVD is back. They've got some players. They've got an opportunity there. This is a huge game. Jimbo Fisher comes in there with a ton of pressure coming off of last year. That's a game that I'm definitely going to circle, definitely want to see. I think that's got a chance to be a good one. That's a 2:30 Central kick, 3:30 Eastern kick. Iowa at Iowa State, that's always fun. That's always a
Hmm.
good one there. Rolling down the list here. Let's see. SMU at Oklahoma could be a little fun. That's going to be a 5
Yep.
o'clock kick. And then we've got Oregon at Texas Tech in the nightcap. Texas Tech, I actually watched this game weirdly enough. It was Texas Tech at Wyoming. Went to overtime. Texas Tech looked like the better team, just didn't make enough plays. They've got a chance to upset Oregon here. I think Oregon's got too much quality in class to lose to them. But it's the Pac-12 and the Big 12. It's just two of the weirdest conferences. There's just always upsets, particularly on the road. So circle that one. That one could be a little bit interesting. There's the one big game that we're going to take some time to talk about here. I want to make sure that there's nothing else that I missed in Stanford at USC. 20 years ago, there'd be a big game. Now Stanford is trying to find themselves. USC is probably going to win that game by 30 plus.
Right.
And then that brings us to the big one. Texas at Alabama. And we can spend a couple minutes talking about that. Texas played 30 kids on defense. They've got a loaded offense. They've got a great play caller in Sarkisian coming into Bama. Bama's got Milroe. Bama's got Knee Black and a couple other receivers that look like they're flashing a little bit. I'm not sold on Alabama's run game, which is odd to say because they always run the
Mm.
heck out of football.
Yep.
Texas should have won that ball game last year. I don't know. This is really a pick 'em. I think Texas has a big point to prove. I think that there's a lot of pride that comes with Texas football, and they've kind of been dormant for a while. Oddly enough, 09 game, McCoy gets hurt. Bama goes on to win a national championship over Texas. It's kind of the last time Texas has been relevant. Big statement game for the Texas Longhorns going into Bama. Not comfortable giving a prediction. I think it's even. It may be deep into the fourth quarter overtime game. That's the game of the week. A&M, I'd give the second game, but this is by far and away the game of the week. What do you think about Texas traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide?
Yeah, and I love what I see from the roster of Texas. I'm seeing there. Are you guys ready for this moment? Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready to go to a place like Alabama and play against a roster like what they have? And then two, it's kind of what we pointed out early. Milford, are you ready to show that you can make the big plays when they need them? So I tend to lean more a little bit towards Alabama just because the games at home, they seem to play better at home when they're in these big games. But I mean, I agree with you. It could go either way. It really depends on what Milpro we're going to see. I've seen the good Milpro and I saw the bad one several times last year. So I think it's really just, I think his passing numbers will tell you a lot about what he does in this game. If he struggles passing the ball, I probably lean more towards Texas. If he is on point and he's in rhythm with his passing game, I think Alabama will certainly have a chance to you probably pull it out. But I think it's going to be a close one. I don't think it's going to be just Alabama jumps on him, but I think Alabama's got probably the more experienced and seasoned defense than Texas. But Texas is kind of set up for this moment, and this is kind of a moment of truth for Texas that, hey, are you arriving or are you just a team that's on the verge of kind of figuring out how to win and get to that point? So we've seen Texas on the verge a few times. So I think this is kind of time where, Sark's got to show it against his old boss, like, hey, I can do it. We're ready for this moment. And I think it could go either way, but I tend to lean a little bit more towards Alabama, but I think it's close.
Yeah, that's going to be the game. One game that I should have mentioned because I do think that it's going to be very entertaining. I think that it's going to be quite a scene. It's going to be Nebraska at Colorado, Deion's
Yeah.
first home game. It may be an entire whole concert prior to that game. I do think Colorado will look good. I think Colorado will win comfortably. I think Rule's got a big rebuild at Nebraska. That's
Yeah.
going to be a fun game. So I do want to throw that in there. It pales in comparison to the Texas-Bama game, but I do think that Colorado team deserves some mention. I think what Deion's doing there deserves some notoriety. He's going to get
Yeah.
it because
Yeah.
11 a.m. Fox is going to be there, and it's going to be a show.
Yeah, it's going to be a show, and you can't trust Nebraska right now. There's any team that knows how to lose. They find ways to lose, whether they play good or not. I think it'll be interesting to see if there's any adversity or downside coming off that TCU game. If they kind of face some adversity, maybe throw a pick early or get behind in the game, just how they react to that kind of moment. If that did happen, I'm not expecting that to happen because I think it's their first home game. It's going to be a lot of excitement. They're probably going to take care of business and win. And then the other game for me is that that Texas A&M Miami game. I think that's a big deal. I think Miami's been saying like Mario is our savior. Mario Cristobal is our savior. Well, this is it right here. Like, because if you lose this game, it ain't happening the rest of the year. It's
a big
done.
one.
So you have to, one, Mario needs to show that, hey, I'm the guy, that I'm going to be the guy. And then, and I know Jimbo well, he does not like to lose to Miami. And so he puts a lot of emphasis every time he goes to Miami. So I've already talked about how impressed I was with Texas A&M. So I think this is kind of the stand for Mario, that because if you don't win this game, then you go in some later games where you're playing at Temple. That's kind of scary. If you lose this game, you got all that pressure on you, and then you just go in the ACC play, and it's just like you just kind of behind the eight ball. So I think this is kind of
Huge game.
A strong moment for a statement moment, like kind of what FSU had to go through last week of showing what you are. Like, what are you going to be? Because Miami hasn't won a championship in the ACC ever. They haven't shown anything, and so you eventually got to start showing it. Because if you don't, the noise is going to get loud as the season goes on. And I think this is the game. I think I've said it from the start of the year that they need to win one of the three games of FSU, Clemson. Clemson makes a little more likely now, but
Clemson looks doable now. That
yeah,
looks
yeah.
a little more doable.
So FSU, Clemson, or Texas A&M. So it's still going to be hard if you go into Death Valley and you're winning there. But Texas A&M, this is a game that if you want to get some momentum going and you want to get some buzz about your program, these are the type of games that you got to win. Like, these are the type of ones that Mario has to win. And if he doesn't win this game, it's going to be a long week in Coral Gables as far as the Miami fans and how they feel, because there's going to be a lot of doubt creeping in if he doesn't win this game Saturday.
Absolutely, ton of pressure. And what I've said to some Miami buddies of mine is the pressure is not just on Mario. Living here in Texas, Houston
Mm-hmm.
area, the pressure on the Texas A&M football Aggies is heavy. So they're coming in there pissed off, jobs on the line, putting food on the table on the line for that coaching staff too. And Jimbo don't lose to Miami, so that's going to be a good one. It's not Texas, Alabama. It doesn't have that national reputation. Texas A&M's barely ranked, had a crap season last year. So yes, Miami has an opportunity, but it's not like they're playing a top 10, top 5 team. But it's a big, big statement. But A&M's coming in there pissed off too, with a lot to prove.
Right, and that's what excites me about this game: the pressure on both sides. That there's pressure both on Miami. You don't do this, it's kind of like, okay. And you say you have another struggle year, then like, okay, then there's gonna be whispers, and okay, we start looking around, and then with Jimbo, he needs to win this game because you're coming off a rough season. So I think this is pivotal for both of these games, kind of a must win for both of these programs to kind of set the tone for the rest of the year.
All right, so I want to end this watching the NBA on TNT. They've got a little segment, and I'm going to steal it. Rico's Nito stat of the night.
Okay.
The lowest ticket for the Texas Alabama showdown, $171. Steep, right? Expensive. The lowest ticket for the Nebraska at Colorado game, $369 to get into the building. Wow.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And I mean, but that's what Deion's built there. He wanted to build excitement, and it's going to be, I mean, we're going to tune in. Like, that's the thing. That's what he wants. Like, so we're going to tune in and watch. We're going to see what it looks like. And I think that's what he's wanted to build. And so it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun ride to watch all year to see what they do.
Is what it is. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be back next week. Mike, thank you as always. Always a pleasure talking ball with you. That is going to be Mike and Rico's college football breakdown of week 1, plus a preview of week 2. A couple big games on deck. We're looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Good night. God bless. And we will see you next week.